Hello, everyone. This is Defense Politics Asia, and welcome to the DPA panel. And this time around, we're going to talk about Africa. So, I'm gonna throw this over to Koping. Koping is the sponsor for this panel, and he shall take over.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for watching. I am Coping, and the so-called sponsor of this topic, and the panel subgroup. Now, what does it mean for me being a sponsor? Well, it doesn't mean that I'm in charge. It basically just means that I took the initiative to reach out to people to talk about a specific topic, and here it's a broad topic. It's a lot of things to talk about, so we need an entire group. And I'm fortunate to be joined by people who are both from Africa or share interest in Africa, such as myself. So, with that being said, I'm not an arbiter by any sort. I don't have a position of authority. As for my personal qualifications, I am Norwegian, as you might be seeing on the handle. Feedback.
Feedback.
Rommel, mute yourself.
Rommel.
Thank you. So, sorry about that. We're having some issues, but we will sort it. Finishing my introduction and also disclaimer. I am Norwegian, and I know people from Ghana, so that is why I have also an interest. It's my bias, sort of, for being interested in Africa in general. I think it's important for you to understand that I have no formal education or profession such as working in foreign relations or international work of any sorts that give me extra insight that you may not have. So I will be viewing this probably very similar to you. Also worth noting, and I think this is very important for you to know, why am I here and why everyone here is here? It is because of the open mic channel. There, we met each other, we could converse and express our opinion and hold ourselves accountable in public, even though we're not politicians. After which, we were invited into the Telegram group, the Open Mic Lounge, which is a closed group for only people on the open mic. There is where I reached out to my fellow panelists. And we are not necessarily professionals, at least not in its entirety. We're not here to be speaking from a perspective of authority. We are basically just laying out this is how we see it, and then we'll take it from there. And I think you have to also understand that we are operating with some time constraints, and Africa is a big topic to be covering. So we'll touch off a little bit light this time. We'll basically just introduce ourselves, our perspectives, and then we will be engaging in conversations thereof. I think that is a sufficient introduction and disclaimer from my part. So since I started off as a non-African, I think it is appropriate that we take the other non-African who's even further away from Africa than me. And that will be you, Wyatt. Please introduce yourself to the audience.
So, hello, everyone. I'm Wyatt. I'm from Singapore. Yeah. So, you guys should know me if you're following the channel. And so I don't know much about Africa. So, I will be very happy to learn about Africa. But I can bring to the panel is the geopolitical and understanding about country to country relationship, diplomacy, and hopefully I can contribute, or if not, I would just happy to be here to just host the panel and learn from it from everyone. So move on to Prata.
I think we're just going to move over to Prata because it will be, I think it's a good segue from him to Vosh, and then we'll get our focus group for North Africa if our connection holds. I forgot to disclaim this for you in the audience that we're having some connection issues. So Aymen and Rommel might occasionally be dropping off. Our initial plan was to focus more on North Africa, but we will have to adapt a little bit accordingly due to these reasons. Anyways, just to proceed, Prata, please introduce yourself.
So, I am from Portugal, and perhaps some people know Portugal is perhaps the country in Europe that's more connected to Africa than any other. From somehow it all started, modern colonialism all started with Portugal and somehow also ended with Portugal. Still today, we have a huge connection to Africa, and that will be my contribution. I'm a sociologist, so trying to go a bit more through post and neo-colonial theories, a bit of this understanding how domination still exists, although all these countries are still independent. And the same thing applies to some European countries as well. So I will try to make this connection. Yeah, especially I'm very pleased to this panel because Portugal has a very strong connection to Morocco. It's perhaps not very well known, but it's very basic in the construction of our identity for many reasons, from the historical background that the North Africans left in the Iberian Peninsula, and later on how Portugal started its maritime adventure through Morocco, Ceuta to be more precise, that unfortunately has still not been decolonialized, but that's another topic. Go on.
So if you're done with your introduction, Prata, yes? Okay,
Yes.
cool. Vosh, Angola has a lot of connection with Portugal, so that's why I thought it was appropriate that we start off with you. Can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Okay, yes, I'm voice do Povo. That means people's voice in English. Yeah, I'm from Angola, and I'm here just to share what I know about Africa and talking about civil wars that happen in Africa all these times.
So
All right. So in that case, who is going to take the first shot, Morocco or Algeria? Okay, so Morocco made the first shot. Rommel, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Well, my name is, I'm not going to say my name for a certain reason. All what you need to know is I'm a soldier in the Moroccan army. I'm an officer, more specifically, in the reserve. I'm 24 years old, and I'm quite well versed in my country's history. That is quite intertwined with the history of Portugal. So I can't wait so that we can discuss this.
You will. We will.
Very awesome. Very awesome.
We also have quite a diplomatic role with Algeria as of now, which is sad, really sad, but still.
Well, I think
you in trouble.
I think it's excellent that we have you from Morocco and Aymen from Algeria because of the political relations, and that leaves a lot for us to talk about and for many of us non-Africans to understand. Yeah, Aymen, can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Okay, guys, before we start, you have to understand my country is not. Aymen, a moment, please. Can I have a moment?
Go ahead.
Yes, my country is not a free country. There is things that I can't say freely. Just the fact that I'm using my face is quite dangerous for me. So I hope you can understand that I'm not asking me some tough question.
We will try to keep opinions as neutral and detached as possible, as formal as possible as well. We will be operating mostly by formal statements anyways, by the politicians themselves, so it's not really controversial in that regard. But yeah, of course, it's good that you give that disclaimer. I think it's important for the people in the audience to know that, and if you're serving in the military, especially, you have what's called operational secrecy, and there are many facets here involved. So I hope you can give us latitude in that regard. So let's finish the introduction. Aymen, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Aymen.
Aymen, you might be muted.
It's really
You're unmuted, yes. You muted yourself again. This should be a handle slogan. You're muted.
just
There you go.
wait,
Aymen, speak.
Wait for just wait for it. It takes about 30 seconds to unplug. First of all, sorry for the problems. It is Africa. We are African, that's all. Second, sorry for English. My name is Aymen. I am from Algeria. On my standpoint, I will try to make a formal statement away from my own perspective and own opinions to make this panel as much as education as possible. And thank you.
Okay, awesome. So now I hope to you in the audience that you understand that none of us here are speaking from a position of authority. And most we have some expertise and so forth, but we are basically just regular people from different places of the world. And we are going to be colored and shaped by those prior perspectives. And this is what this is all about, basically. You are going to be hopefully enjoying our exchanges here as we try to kind of get our different perspectives, probably quite a lot of preconceived notions, ironed out in a, ordinary fashion. Just some guys talking. So I think since we have the North Africans here and stable on their internet, I would like to ask. Either one of you, and you may choose which one to start regarding the recent political statements made between Morocco and Algeria, and maybe explain a little bit about that relation, how contentious. Because it's only thing most people might know from the outside is that Morocco and Algeria has a fairly tense relation. Would one of you care to explain why?
Sure, I'll be happy. So, as you might know, both France and Morocco were part of France and Spain, were occupied and colonized by France. You can hear me, guys, right?
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
In the 1950 and 1960, Morocco got its independence first. However, France being France, it left the border unanswered. For instance, there is two regions in Morocco by the name of Tindouf and something else that Morocco claimed to be part of their own territory, but they are part of Algeria. So Morocco wants those territory back, and in the 1960s, the Moroccan army attacked Algeria in what became known as the Sand War. It ended in a stalemate, no one won, and that was the first blood that was drawn in the war. The second blood was about Western Sahara. So in the history of Morocco from time to time it will control the Sahara, the Sahara of today. It will be control. It was controlled, if I remember correctly, 75% of our existence. Morocco controlled the Western Sahara. However, Western Sahara has its own culture, its own identity, etc. And some part of those people want to be independent. And Algeria supports those people. That's the problem. Now, that was the case in the 1970s. Today, the part of Western Sahara is mainly occupied by Moroccan and Arabs. Arab Syrian refugees were relocated in the Sahara. Palestinian refugees were also relocated in the Sahara. So if you look at it from a raw population perspective, the vast majority of the people there support Morocco's claim to the Western Sahara. Yet Algeria does not recognize those people. It recognizes only the indigenous part of the people as having the right to speak in terms of with whom they want to join. Do they want to be independent, or do they want to join Morocco? And the vast majority of those indigenous people, as far as I can tell, wants independence. That's the problem.
There is a peace process, right? Going on. The United Nations is following a peace process.
Not really. Like just there's the United States of America supporting us, and that support is keeping the Polisario Front at bay. That's it. As far as peace treaty. This is the peace that we have. This is the
process. Peace process.
Yes, this is the process that we have. Let me finish. The peace process that we had is that there must be a referendum. There is a referendum between that needs to be conducted in this Sahara.
Right,
the problem is that Morocco only wants everyone to vote. Algeria wants only the indigenous people to vote. That's the problem.
Yeah, but there is a process that was started by the United Nations, more or less, and there is this referendum, and that's also is there a date already for the referendum?
No, it's not. There was supposed to be a date in 2010, But
it
if I remember
keeps
correctly,
changing because they don't
Yeah.
get along. Yeah.
because we don't agree on the modality of on the norm of the vote. As I said, Morocco wants everyone to vote. The Polisario wants only a very small minority of people to vote, the indigenous people of Western Sahara.
But the thing is, Morocco also doesn't claim the whole part of the West Sahara.
It controls 2/3.
Yeah, but doesn't claim the other part.
Yes, it does actually.
It does?
We do
Oh,
claim.
okay.
We do claim it, yes.
I
But the
thought
rest
you
of the-
didn't.
No, the rest of the part is completely inhabited without any natural resources, etc. Now, the reason
So-
why the reason why we want the Western Sahara in the first place is because we believe that the 10% of the entire oil and gas reserves of the world is in the Western Sahara.
But also phosphates. This is very important. Morocco has 70% of the whole world's phosphates.
Yeah.
And if you need to produce fertilizers, you need phosphates. And phosphates
Yeah.
is from the three known components, the one that's more rare from them other. Actually, Morocco
Yeah.
is a superpower just because of phosphates. Algeria as well has a big quantity, but most of the mines are inside of historical Morocco's, but there is
Yes,
this
in-
huge mine also in West
Just to
Sahara.
add a little cosmic fact when it comes to phosphorus, they recently discovered that there's actually a lot less phosphorus in the universe than previously thought. The production of phosphorus through stars imploding is much lower than we thought. So phosphorus is a very, very difficult element for us to actually just synthesize. It's also not something we can readily extract from anywhere in the universe either. And our reserves here on the planet is actually quite limited. Like it is actually that is a physical barrier to how many people you can have, because you need it for
100
your
years.
plants. Yeah, like you need it for everything to be existing. We are built up of phosphorus in our bones and in our skin and so forth. Plants also are built up with phosphorus. So it's actually like we are talking about like from a geopolitical lens here now, an extremely crucial
Yes.
resource that is a
Extremely
fundamental
crucial.
for a lot of industry as well
Yes.
as agriculture.
Not just that, coping, something worse than that. You see, until the chemicals fertilizers were discovered in the end of the 19th century, we had to pick up phosphates by exploring islands in the middle of the sea, which had a big level of phosphate due to the detritus of birds. But after we discovered phosphate and the three elements that constitute the fertilizers, we were able to increase the production of food in such a way that the human population grow through the planet in very big. So if we don't have fertilizers, and this is extremely dangerous moment now, we won't be able to feed people on the planet. It's very complicated.
So I want to know about from Algerian perspective. Okay, I think Aymen is back. No.
Rommel is still speaking about why does Morocco thinks it wants the West Sahara, but do you think really it's just about resources? There's not something else?
No, it's about national identity. You see, Morocco is the only Arab nation that existed throughout its history. We were around here since 900 after Jesus Christ. In the year 900 AD, we were already existing as a cohesive state, and we never lost our independence until the 1830s, and officially
impressive.
till 1920.
My question
is this thing that was taken out of those territories they were talking about, the War of Sand, no? Those territories that the French took out from the old Moroccan Emirates, it's actually a punishment from the French, because the
You have to understand something, Prata. Since we were colonized and occupied, but we were never pacified. Throughout our history, we always fought. We never surrendered. We never officially surrendered. If you look in the 1920s, let me explain. If you remember, in the 1920s, there was an uprising by the Moroccan people in the north called the Rif War. 20,000 Moroccan soldiers fought against some 60,000 Spanish forces. We slaughtered them. There was
You
a battle
slaughtered the Portuguese.
No, the Spanish, not the Portuguese.
No, yeah, but Alcázar Quibir.
Yes, the Battle of the Three Kings. Yes. Sorry about that. Rest in peace, Sebastian. So, after the rebellion of General Abdel Karim Khattabi, in order to beat us, the French and the Spanish had to use chemical attacks, gas attacks. To this day, we still have residue of that war, and that was a point of contention with the Spaniards. We nearly killed Franco, by the way. During that war, we nearly killed Franco. So we might not have had.
That's a pity. That's a pity you didn't, because that guy was a bit crazy sometimes. But it's quite interesting to know that France occupied Morocco from 1912 to 1956. Morocco was the first African country after the Second World War, except Egypt, that was able to get rid of their occupation. But one must say, the French, the Spanish less, but the French really had big trouble to occupy Morocco. It's like the treaties from 1912, but Moroccans were still resisted. They never really managed to control the interior of the country. The Moroccans were like, I think it was in 1935 that the French finally got under their control, a very light control of the most interior parts of Morocco.
Yes, they control Agadir, they control Casablanca and Marrakesh. That was the three city. Agadir, because that's where the phosphate is. And they control that damn fucking part. But otherwise, the rest of the city was the rest of the country was largely was really lawless, to say the least.
Also, something is very impressive about Morocco is that they never lost their elites. So we see like a king, Mohammed V, right?
That was the previous king, yes. Today the king is Mohammed VI.
Yeah, and it's impressive how Morocco is one of the very few countries in Africa, or actually from all the colonized in the world, that still had their elites to reclaim their independence. Their regional elites, their royal family.
No, in reality, the ruling party, the nobility, the aristocracy, etc., was pretty much eliminated. We only have the king now.
Really?
We no longer have what can be considered a duke, a duchess, a count, etc. We only have the king. The king is the only source of authority other than that. And then, of course, he shares power with according to our constitution, he controls the foreign policy and the military. The internal affair is officially controlled by the prime minister. Officially.
That's also very interesting you say that, because as far as I read a bit, the French just agreed to retreat from Morocco if the new king was allowed to create a constitutional monarchy and give independent civil rights or something like that. Otherwise, the French didn't want to live.
We don't negotiate like that. No. You either get off or we're gonna slaughter you. That's it. That's it. We're gonna do it on our own accord. We're not gonna negotiate with you. Fuck off, bitch. That's the condition. You get out. They wanted to fuck us when they left. They wanted to peg our currency to the franc, like they did in Mali, Burkina Faso, etc. But we say no. Fuck you. We're not doing that. And it worked quite well. Oh yeah.
Well, Morocco has quite impressive economical numbers, though it's not in a very favorable economical situation. It's still not very bad.
We're the fifth largest economy in Africa, and we still don't exploit our natural resources to the fullest. For instance, we're an Arab nation, and if you're an Arab nation without oil, you're not an Arab nation. But we do have oil. We have
a little bit.
No. If you go to Wikipedia or anything and you look at the oil shell of Morocco in the heartland the oil shell, the oil reserve.
Rommel, don't forget that these things, to start exploring these things.
No. We know. Let me finish. We know where they are.
But it takes a lot of time to get them, and worse than that, and that's the worst thing. The worse than that is that in order for you to explore your resources, you have to make deals with Americans, with the French, with the.
Actually, Prata, what you're saying there, it leads me to a question I wanted to ask you, Rommel, that is relevant, because like you said about building infrastructure and that, sure, okay, there's a timeline to that. But as far as I know, there is a pipeline going from Nigeria to Morocco. I believe there was some contentions with Algeria in that regard as well. I'm not sure, but there's a pipeline going from Nigeria to Morocco that is meant to continue into Europe. To which I would assume Morocco would have many of the benefits as Ukraine had, like when it comes to Russia supplying gas to Europe, in the same manner, basically.
It's not a build. It's a project. It's a future project that we consider building, but the reality of it, it's not gonna come true because the Algerians oppose it. They want the pipeline to go through their territory.
You are talking about the one that's coming from Nigeria? The one coming from Nigeria? Oh, no, but Coping is talking about another one, the one that transports gas through Morocco and comes into Spain.
I don't know anything about that. We don't have something like that. You have to understand.
I think you do.
No, I don't think we have, because I'm not sure.
I know. You know why, Rommel, you don't know? Because the Algerians, they refuse to sell you gas. It goes through your territory, but they refuse to sell you gas. And the crisis was that you had now a problem because the French and the Spanish were like were thinking about something, were scheming about something. The Algerians got very mad and they cut up the pipeline, and that was like. But the Algerians don't want to sell you guys gas
because we don't have an economy based on oil. If you look at the Arab world and you remove the oil, we're the second largest economy after Egypt, I think. Now, the problem with oil is that we do have oil, we do have gas. We have approximately 3.5% of the entire gas reserve in the world, in the heartland of Morocco, from Tanja to Lyon. We have those. The problem is that it's difficult to access to it. It's so beneath, it's under earth, it's difficult to access to it, and we don't have the financial capability to build the necessary infrastructure to get.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult.
I just want to know something. You know, about France, since they started all this mess between Algeria and Morocco, where is France standing on all this?
Can you repeat the question, please?
You know, France is the one who started the mess between Algeria and Morocco. So where France standing?
Where is the standing of France today?
Now, where is France? What France is doing to make things better because they started the mess?
It depends.
Bosch, are you asking Rommel who France prefers over Algeria?
No. It's not about preference. It's not about preference. It's about what they're doing to make things better.
Okay, listen. Let me explain. France
don't
do anything to make things better. They want to make things worse.
Obviously, we want to make things worse.
Yes.
I already knew that. I just want to know between Algeria and Morocco.
Actually, can we have Aymen give a little bit perspective from Algeria, because that will make us ready to kind of address France, because it was a colony of France after all. So,
I know for sure it doesn't. I know for sure it doesn't like the French. I know that for sure.
So, Aymen, please.
Like there is something to know about Algeria. Algeria to France wasn't a colony; it was part of France. They see it as Lyon or Paris in that time, not a colony, not protected, not anything, but an integral part of France. When the revolution started, they did everything in their hand to stop it. Even like Tunisia and Morocco, who both got their independence 2 years after the start of the war, it was related to Algeria to concentrate forces. At some point, they have in the late 50s, they will have almost 2 million soldiers in Algeria to fight. So that's the position of France, how they see Algeria, and it's still until this day. Lots of problems between Algeria and France come from this standpoint of lots of establishments in France still see Algeria as an colony. About Algeria and Morocco,
Can I
Rommel
ask you a
said,
question? I mean, regarding that, because it sounds
yes,
similar to kind of like basically settler colonialism, where France is trying try to incorporate Algeria by placing its own population. And I just wondered, and I don't mean to be stirring any hornet's nest there, so apologies if I do, but I wanted to ask, like, would you kind of perceive like Morocco's settlement of its population in West Sahara to be kind of similar to what France did to Algeria? And like, I know they're not the same, but would you kind of see that, like, maybe would that perhaps explain why Algeria would be supporting the Polisario Front, I think they're called, in the West Sahara? But does that make any sense? I'm just asking as one from the outside, if that makes any sense for you as an Algerian to perceive it like that politically as well.
Algeria supported Polisario even before Morocco took control of Western Sahara. Algeria supported Morocco when it supported Polisario when it was still a Spanish colony. Algeria, at one of its principles, is supporting any colony in Africa. That is one of the main things. Like even Nelson Mandela have come to Algeria and trained to before going to South Africa, even before Algeria independence in the 60s. That he come to Morocco, to an Algerian camp there in Morocco, and trained there. And in the 70s, in 60s, 70s, lots of revolutionary in Africa. They call Algeria the Mecca of rebels because it always supported this. So it doesn't have. So this is the standpoint of Algeria. It doesn't matter if it's Morocco or Mauritania, because even Mauritania took a 50% of Western Sahara and the independence in the 75, and they reduced it because
so
of
basically, basically, what I said about Algeria supporting West Sahara because of Algeria's settler colonial history with France. It doesn't extend to just West Sahara because of something with Morocco or anything. It extends to absolutely every single African country.
Yes, Coping, you have to understand that Algeria, the process of independence of Algeria was very painful, but at the same time extremely productive in terms of theories, in terms of perspective, bigger perspective. And Algeria became actually the center for many independence movements all over, not just Africa, but also in other parts of the world. And that's impressive role that Algeria played. Even the Portuguese Revolution in 75 is influenced by Algeria. Algeria was giving support, economical and military support, to many independence movements after it regained its independence. So Algeria gained its independence in 1962, is that correct?
62.
Yes. From North Africa is one of the last
July,
ones.
1962.
Yes, it was one of the last ones. It was extremely bloody, extremely bloody, and it's interesting. You were saying about
is referred to as the dark decade.
I'm not sure about that.
Aymen mentioned in the group chat. We were just talking among ourselves, and he mentioned about the dark decade. I wondered if that was the. I haven't got time to read.
It's from 1992 to 2002.
For people to have an idea,
3 decades later. The dark decade is 3 decades later.
But I just think that for people to have an idea, the French, you were talking about 2 million military French soldiers, but the French had 1 million colonists, French Europeans there. I don't think there is any other African country that receives that immense amount of
South Africa had like 4 or 5 million during the apartheid era.
On a very long period.
That was a different thing, because South Africa became independent independence from the British in 1910, I think. 1910,
Right,
I
but
think.
I was thinking like because
Yeah.
Prata said that the 1 million French in Algeria was the largest, but as far as I know, like South Africa had, and that was over a shorter period of colonization.
But
That
it's
South
different.
Africa ended up with 4 million, and that was a combination of Dutch and the British. So maybe
You know, something like that happened in Angola. You know, Angola independence wasn't the best one. The Portuguese went to Angola to live. They saw Angola now. This is the place I want to live. And because of the way things go out of the hand, a lot of people, a lot of Portuguese people lost their things, you know, their lives. Because Angola wanted independence. The Portuguese wants to stay. And when they left, they had to leave. They thought it's going to be a revolution. That was something really, really, really bad for the Portuguese people who were in Angola. They were there to live, to make their life in Angola. But because of people back in Portugal, they changed their lives, you know. When they left, most of the houses, buildings were abandoned. The Angolan people were still living outside the capital city or the proper house. They were still living in the ghetto because they were scared that the Portuguese might come back. But the Portuguese
Different
never.
story, Vosh. It's a bit the story than Algeria,
Yeah,
because you see, the Portuguese knew they were going to Africa, and they were going to have an African life. But the French that went to Algeria, they thought they were in France. They were building France completely.
yeah. But if you see that in Mozambique was different. The Portuguese agreed to leave Mozambique, but they never agreed to leave Angola. That was the problem. It's the same like Algeria.
You have oil there.
In Algeria, they want to stay.
You have oil
Right,
in
because
Angola.
we were saying that because I remember what I know regarding the Algeria War of Independence was that there were a lot of, they were coined as terrorist attacks. They were equated often with the Palestinians for pretty much the same reason. They were conducting an attack against where the areas of the settler population was, and of course civilian casualties. It's war, but it's not counted as war. It's counted as but in Angola, the Portuguese basically just decided to leave.
No, they were obliged.
They obliged and left.
Yes. No, well, the people were scared and left, but they were it is like this. Voj will probably say more. I think the Angolan perspective is that the Portuguese left because they were afraid. The Portuguese would say they were forced to live. And
did they have Algeria as an example?
You know, they really, really didn't were forced to leave. Some people start that thing. I think the Portuguese starting that to make the Portuguese who live in Angola to go to a civil war. But most of the Portuguese were in the Angolan side because they want to stay in Angola to fight.
Me not knowing the history, let me ask you a question, please.
You know the way America got independence from the British. That's the same way the Portuguese want to make in Angola, but things go out of hand, and they had to leave.
Can I ask all of you a question? My impression is that the Algerian War of Independence preceded the Angolan War of Independence.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yeah,
so could it be like, now I'm just throwing in, if this is a speculation, it's just like could it be like one of the reasons that the Portuguese settlers in Angola were much more inclined to just oblige and leave was because they had an example of if you stay, they will fight you, and you are not safe just because you're a civilian, for example.
No, Coping, I don't think it was that.
Can I talk?
I don't think it was that. What happened was chaos. The political situation in Portugal was chaotic, and nobody knew what to believe. And Vosh probably also knows that in this kind of exterior, people and the rumors as well. The communists are coming, whatever, and in this exterior, people start to live like running. They were running away. They didn't have to, and we know, for instance, the south of Angola, received the news very delayed, and people stayed actually there until the 80s, and there was the invasion.
They didn't run that far. They just went to South Africa.
No, but they still stayed. But in the 80s, it was later, Vosh.
That was in 75.
Yeah, no, in 75 is
because the party in south of Angola, they were kind of racist. They didn't like the Portuguese. That's the party with most Portuguese people.
Yes, the Portuguese left in the south in the 80s when the South Africans came.
Prata, I want to ask one thing, if I understood you correctly, because my impression was a little bit that, one of the things you pointed out was, and Vosh also pointed out, they didn't have to leave, but they had a lot of scare propaganda. So if you were to put it at the state level, the difference between France and Portugal as it pertains to Algeria and Angola was that in Algeria, France tried to keep people motivated to stay and keep fighting. They used the propaganda instruments in that regard.
Trust me, in 1975. Trust me, in 1975, when Angola got the independence, until 1976, the houses were still empty because Angola thought the Portuguese were gonna come back. People just started moving to this house in 1977 because they thought the Portuguese were gonna come back.
Rommel was trying to say something, right, Rommel?
The difference between Algeria and Angola is Algeria is an Arab Muslim nation. We don't play the same. We don't have the same rule as Angola. We will fight for every inch of our territory. So it wasn't an option for France. For Portugal, I don't know if I'm correct, but the Portuguese could have stayed, and there would have been no problem if they stayed.
The Portuguese didn't want to fight. The people live in Angola. Portuguese live in Angola. They didn't want to fight. They want to make their life there. They wanted to make their life in Portugal.
Since you guys mentioned communism, I think that might actually answer Rommel, because as far as I know, Angola actually was a recipient to a lot of Soviet support during the Cold War. They also got Cuban fighters and to come over.
No, coping, you're wrong. Angola, the parties of Angola got a lot of help from Algeria, also from the Soviet Union, but this was in the independence fight. But after the independence, what we got was something much worse than the colonial war. It was a civil war, which actually Algeria also had, where two powers, the Soviet Union and the United States, financed two opposing groups to kill each other. Angola was so bloody like you cannot imagine, but in Algeria it was even worse.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. I must correct something. Some things. First of all, about France. Popin said that France had to tell its population in Algeria to stay. That's wrong. Actually, in 1956, the French living in Algeria rebelled against France because they thought they were going too easy. They rebelled, because they rebelled, the fourth Republic of France fall, and then Charles de Gaulle come and established the fifth Republic. That's the first thing. The second thing, that trend continued. The people the French people living in Algeria were much inclined when wanting to stay against the De Gaulle. De Gaulle wanted to leave with as much as dignity he can, because
so
they lost a lot.
So in other way, the French colonists were very similar to the American colonists. They wanted to actually have more of their reign around in the area and stay, whereas the British wanted to be more restrained. The French government wanted actually to be a little bit more restrained, maybe even leave. But the population, the settlers that lived there, they were so committed and hardcore that they were even willing to rebel against France itself.
They even killed lots of French. They even killed. There was an organization called the OIS, meaning the Red Hand. They bombed Paris. They bombed the Paris civilian and did a lot of assassination. That's the first point.
Good job.
The second point about what Prata said about the civil war. There was not a two-side civil war in Algeria because it happened in 1992 after the fall of Soviet Union. So it was Islamic versus state. Terrorist war. It was not a civil war as much as what it was closer to terrorist war. When you have terrorist organization doing stuff and the state opposing them. They didn't control land, or they were just living in mountains, stepping down to rural areas, killing as many civilians as they can, then running back.
Okay, my question, guys. I'm gonna ask you a fun question. Who do you think supported the Islamists during the Algerian civil war?
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Yes, but they are the Americans.
Saudi
Americans.
Yeah, it was the reason we have a lot of fighters. They all trained in Afghanistan by the CIA and the Saudis and the French.
Okay, if I may introduce something here, this is something very interesting. I'm sorry that I confused a bit the things, saying it was one against the other, but it's almost the same because you see, Algeria was never pro-Soviet completely. Well, they had a big component of Soviet help to development, but they never really sided. Actually, they maintained themselves pretty much neutral. But
they did the guns.
Make it in dance, but more to the Soviet side. Yeah, that's true. Now, what happened is very interesting. After the fall of the Soviet Union, we see this paranoia about United States to destroy all those old centers of Soviet support that existed. So we see, like in Algeria, they were trying to make a regime change, and then later they tried again in the with the Arab Springs.
The Arab Spring never reached Algeria. You didn't have Arab Spring, Aymen.
No. After that, well, they tried this in Algeria, and then they came back later with the same story with the Arab Springs.
I would actually like Aymen to explain a little bit about that, because he said something about Algeria being quite peculiar. Yeah, please, Aymen.
Go. I just pointed to Prata that he's right. What Algeria lived through the 90s, it's the same what happened in Arab Spring. So we had our spring 20 years earlier than other Arab countries.
Yeah, because I recall from the discussion, I think it was actually in the lounge that we had it, where it was actually you and Rommel talking to each other, and I think Rommel asked you if you think the troubles will start happening again, and you simply said never, because Algerians are so fed up with the cycle of violence that it's not extremely warlike. It's actually the opposite. It doesn't want that. It doesn't want social unrest. Was my understanding from observing it. Could you have maybe something you want to add to that?
So for Morocco, when the Arab Spring happened, we saw how it turned out for Syria, for instance, Libya and Egypt. They had war. They had death. They had Islamists. They had ISIS who took part and started beheading everyone. We said, you know what? We're fine the way we are. So let's keep it this way. This was some sort of an unspoken consensus by the population, which I support, by the way. We're fine the way we are. Egypt did the Arab Spring. They changed the government and nothing changed really. They still their president wins election by 96% of the vote, which is wild.
Did Gaddafi ever try to make peace between Algeria and Morocco?
No, fuck this bastard. This bastard tried to orchestrate military coup in every Arab country.
Yes. Gaddafi had two sides. In one side, he was very, let's unite Africa, let's be powerful. The other side, he was always trying to.
But he has a good interest for Africa.
He was a wild man. Qaddafi was a wild man. Like, he was truly a wild man. Like,
The first summit, Europe Africa, was in Lisbon, and he brought a tent because he didn't want to live in a hotel, and he stayed like in the city center with a huge tent.
he was very traditionalist, but also socialist. He was weird. He was a contradiction. He was left wing. He was right wing. You don't understand where the fuck he stood, but he was wild. Like,
He was nationalist African.
he was an Arab nationalist. He was an Arab nationalist first, and then when he realized that that's not gonna happen, he was like, "Yay, Africa!"
Yeah, he actually in Angola, I remember back in communism era in Angola, he was like a hero. Yeah, he was a hero.
But he was a degenerate son of a bitch. No, wait,
still
Prata.
is.
I need to tell the story. He was a degenerate son of a bitch. He had a full bodyguard of female versions. It is
Could be.
wild.
You know, things like that. You know, Angola. There is a.
He will go to university and he will see a girl that he likes. Wait. He will see a girl that he likes, and he will tell his bodyguard he will do this to her, and her bodyguard will shake her without even consulting her. He was a wild boy. And when they killed him, they entered his palace and they found gay porn. This is wild. Gay porn. Motherfucker. He had gay porn. He had all this nonsense, and he go outside in the street and he called Allahu Akbar. We need to live by the Sharia. Like, he was a wild motherfucker.
Speaking of wild things that he did, because he did get killed after all, and one of the wild things he did was, as far as I've understood it, the main reason he actually got clamped down, the kind of final straw, was trying to introduce the gold dinar, which, there was issues with him trying to actually use it as a means to kind of get Africa under Libyan control. But there's also this somewhat real element to it, where you had more unifying factors by having an African reserve currency backed up by gold, which Africa has plenty of. And so I wonder, what do you guys say, especially you from Africa, what do you guys think about Gaddafi in like the final straw that killed him? Like, how important do you think that actually is? Like, was he onto something, for example, or was it just
No, he was like, listen, now you understand what happened when you threaten the American dollar. You get a knife up your ass. And that's what you get when you challenge the dollar. But as far as how we see him, like I can't respect a man that rapes women, because he was a rapist. He was a man who saw his country as some sort of my own personal god. I don't like that kind of shit. He's actually worse than a lot of he was probably the worst Arab leader in terms of his personality and character. So I'm not really fond of him. I don't know exactly how the Algerians feel, but we don't like him.
Things I know about Qaddafi.
He would take 11-year-old as his wife. Like, what the fuck?
Let's contextualize this situation, because it's very interesting. Like, we have the 2008 crisis, which destroys the economy of several countries. And then in 2011 we have the monetary crisis in Europe. We have the Arab Springs, and we have the demonstrations in Moscow against Putin. All with the same origin, which is very interesting. It's like someone was trying to give a coup, a world global coup all over the world back then. How do you guys see that?